Hello YouTube, Sidekick here with a video and a mission. That's kind of a companion mission to my History of Iron Bombing series, which, if you haven't checked those videos out, you really should. At any rate, I'm here in a P-47 in Normandy. The point of this video is to fly a mission that is kind of meant to look at some things let's say they surprised me in my research for doing the history videos. A few of these things have been coming up, and so I decided that maybe what I'd try to do is make some missions that actually tried to reproduce at least a little the things that I'm reading about, which might not be the things that are simulated that often on servers and sort of around the community. Anyways, let me get taxied out to the runway here, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to be doing today. Always exciting taxiing the P-47 if you haven't done it in a little while. Alright, that looks like we're more or less lined up. Time to try and stop in a straight line here. And then we'll get the cockpit closed. I know you're supposed to take off with the canopy open, but I like to do that before I take off. Too many other things to do with my hands once I'm in the air. So as you can see, we're armed with rockets today. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. We got the sight on. Looks like we're about ready to go. So let's get off the ground and then let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing once we get out there today. Okay, airspeed is live. Feel the nose starting to come down. Things get a little bit exciting as she wants to fly but is not quite ready to. Eventually we're off. And time to get the gear up and get ready to go. So let's talk about what we are going to be doing today. As I said, I've tried to create a mission that I think is typical of what was actually flown during the Normandy campaign, but which is maybe not typical of the kind of missions you often see. Specifically today, I'm going to fly an armed reconnaissance mission in the P-47. It turns out that this was, by a fair margin actually, the most common mission that JUG pilots flew in Normandy, especially in the second half of the campaign. An armed reconnaissance mission basically consists of going out to an area behind the front lines and, well, hanging out and looking for trouble, I guess. In the vast majority of cases, that meant strafing convoys of mostly unarmed vehicles. So, despite what you might believe if you trust what you see in the movies, most of the missions that fighter bombers flew in Normandy were not actually in direct support of troops on the ground. In fact, most of the missions were nowhere near them at all. Also, most of the targets were not tanks or other armored vehicles. The vast majority of vehicles destroyed by aircraft in Normandy were unarmed transport vehicles. On the other hand, the drivers of those vehicles also knew the score. They knew that to get caught in the open by the Yabos was a death sentence, so they only moved during the day when they really had to, and I'm sure when they did, they stuck to the back roads and tree lines and other places of concealment when they could. So, today our mission is pretty simple. We're going to go out to an assigned patrol area. We're going to fly around looking for ground targets, most likely in the form of convoys of vehicles. If we find some, we're going to strafe them with machine guns and rockets. Now, I think that part of the general mission and the types of targets and the routes they're going to take are sort of authentic. But there is a lot that's not authentic, I know. The biggest thing that's not authentic is that if this were happening for real, we would by no means be alone in the air. There probably would have been dozens, if not hundreds, of Allied aircraft in the air in the area at one time. They would have been doing everything from what we're doing, armed reconnaissance behind enemy lines, to probably providing overhead protection to ensure that airplanes like us wouldn't have to worry about German fighters, because we probably won't. There might actually have been some actual close air support going on. Probably not working directly with frontline troops, more likely attacking previously identified targets like artillery batteries or headquarters. And in fact, I did make a video a little bit about that called Operation Cobra. You can find it on my channel if you'd like to. At any rate, it would have been a busy airspace. I honestly have no idea how air traffic control worked to keep the airspace deconflicted at the time. Today, we're not simulating any of that, and I'll be honest with you, it's at least partly because the DCS AI is so tedious to deal with. It's just not really worth it to try and put together a mission with a whole lot of AI airplanes in it. I also have no idea if the kind of patrol area that I am using in this mission is in any way authentic. We also probably would have been flying with at least one wingman on a mission like this, but again, DCS AI wingmen are just not worth the trouble, so we're flying solo. So I don't actually know how these taskings were handed out, but I think the basics of what we're going to do when we get up there is still at least representative. So given all of that, here's the plan. It's early July 1944 on the American part of the front. The battles around St. Lo are raging, and in fact, you can see the smoke over there to the left. That is actually St. Lo. But the breakthrough and the breakout have not yet been achieved, and the ground forces are basically still grinding it out. And our job is to make sure that as few reinforcements and supplies as possible reach the enemy in front of our troops. So we've been assigned to patrol an area south of St. Lo, between two small rivers, and inland from the coast. We're armed with a full load of FFARs, rockets, and machine gun ammunition. The mission, by the way, if you want to give it a try yourself, is available on my Discord server. Just drop by and pick up a copy if you'd like to. So you can see we're already south of St. Lo and approaching our patrol area. And now the mission was designed so that there are a number of convoys that could spawn within our patrol area. The convoys all follow set routes, but the routes wind around the landscape and they're not restricted to main roads. The convoys also spawn at random with every mission, so basically, although we have some basic idea generally of where they might be, especially if we've taken a look at the mission editor, we don't know for sure, and we'll just have to look around until we find them. We'll be flying at 5,000 feet, because that seems like a good altitude for spotting convoys while being high enough to see a fair distance, and low enough to see individual vehicles. It also means that we'll be high enough to avoid anyone who might decide to try his luck with small arms fire, although the chance is still pretty remote. So pretty much the toughest part of this mission is going to be finding those targets, because they're not going to be running around in the open where we can spot them easily. And then the other hard part of the mission, or challenging part of the mission, is going to be destroying them efficiently with the rockets and machine guns we have on board, because I've been trying this mission out, and I can tell you, that's harder than it looks, at least for me. Now, we're really not worried about defenses, either on the ground or in the air. It's a possibility that we have to keep an eye out for, but it's not really the thing we're most worried about. So let's take a look at our weapon of choice for this little outing today. We're flying the P-47 D40 model. We can tell that it's the D40 because it actually has a weapons panel down at the bottom and the front panel in the cockpit, and you can drop or fire the wing-mounted weapons with a button on the stick. Because up until the D30 model, you actually had to pull a lever to drop a bomb. And of course, that's because the Jug was not actually designed to be a fighter bomber. It was designed to be a high-altitude interceptor. Okay, take a little break here from discussing the Jug, and note that we are just about in our patrol area. That line there, that river running from across in front of our wing, is actually the northern boundary of our patrol area. So we're going to start shaping a turn around here and start looking at the ground, trying to see if we can find some convoys. As I was saying, the P-47 we're flying in was not designed for this role at all. It was designed as a high-altitude interceptor and bomber escort. We can tell that because the whole huge airplane is designed around the massive turbo supercharger in the back that gives our engine more guts than just about any other at really high altitudes, like 25,000 feet or above. Of course, we won't be using any of that machinery today, but in some ways we will be benefiting from it because the Jug's turbo supercharger allowed the P-47 to get the most out of its power plant, not only at high level, but all the way down to sea level, unlike some fighters, like later models of the Spitfire, that were optimized for higher altitudes and actually weren't at their best down low. The size of the P-47 will also benefit us today if we do run into ground fire, because a side effect of having been built so large, the P-47 was remarkably robust and actually had a reputation for getting pilots home safely even when it was damaged. In fact, in the European theater, you were more likely to get home alive in a P-47 than any other Allied fighter. Okay, so we've been rolling around here looking down at our patrol area for a while. One thing that will certainly have occurred to you is that one of the aspects of the P-47 being an interceptor is that its visibility up and around is excellent, but visibility down to the ground is terrible. Over the nose, it's non-existent, and even over the sides, we're firmly over the wings, so there's really only limited places where you can actually see the ground. And because of that, flying around in circles looking at the ground does get to be a little tedious after a while. So I've speeded up the video. I didn't want to just skip ahead. I wanted to actually go through the whole flight so you can see exactly how much time was taken. But I don't think there's any point in making you sit through it in real time. Okay, we're back because I think I have something. It's a little bit under the wing right now. Here, let me pull around a little bit more and look in tighter. Yes. Yes, I definitely think we have them. There's a little convoy up against a tree line there. Right in there. Yes, look at them coming around there. All right. Okay, well, you can see it's all convoys kind of split into a couple of groups. They're not all on the same road, so it's not going to be the classic just fly down the road strafing them. So I'm just going to come around a little bit here till I'm coming up from behind and then see what we can do. It's also a little bit complicated by the fact that we got a tree line in the middle of things, so not exactly your classic convoy strafe. But here, let's roll in. I'd stay smooth on the roll in. All right, well, let's just pick those guys. Let's just get them stopped. We'll pick this guy right here. All right, and pull up and away. The nose up, looking back. Okay, so we've got them all going off into the field and into cover. They're not continuing down the road anymore anyways. So now we can take a little bit of time to line ourselves up for a bit better pass. We do have the rockets, so let's see if we can figure out if there's a line of vehicles down there that we can get the rockets on. So So we come out a little bit lower than the 5,000 feet we went into. Just keeping my left wing on the target and trying to give myself enough separation back here to line up for a proper rocket run. So I am noticing one thing when I roll in and I pull back the power. It definitely affects the nose. The torque or lack of torque moves the nose, so I am having to juggle the rudder or the rudder trim as I roll in, and that is one of the things I'm having to learn how to do properly here if I want to strafe effectively. Okay, we're rolling in again. The line of them diagonally across the field there. Let's see if we can get the rockets on them. Once again, the biggest issue is just trying to keep the nose on them. That's one thing about these big warbirds, is they do require a lot of work with your feet that jets really don't. That's one thing I have to get used to when I go back and fly the Jug. So pulling up here, see if we can get a little higher maybe this time too. Do a little bit more of a proper chandelle this time. Okay, roll out parallel to the target, look back over there, find it again, and look for the smoke. Okay, let's go around and see what we want to do there. So we basically got a field full of trucks there, but then also the adjacent field has some. Anyways, let's take some of these. I think we're down to picking off one or two at a time now. Let's just pick some that look good. Let's go right down in the corner this time. Try and get the nose from wandering too much. And get it on the target. Getting some hits. Move over to this guy. That one was a good one. So I am definitely not the most efficient strafer in the whole world. Just having some trouble keeping the nose pointed in a consistent direction and getting it on the target. Like I said, that's one of the things that I'm finding I really have to learn. It looks a lot easier than it is. It particularly looks easier if you just line everything up on a road. It's a little bit harder when they're scattered around the field like this or with any kind of tactical separation. So coming around the other direction this time, got a good view of the target, just trying to pick the next victim. Okay, rolling in again. I make the roll in nice and smooth. More importantly, try to make the roll out smooth. That rudder trim on so we're not bouncing all over the place. Line up, line up. Just a little bit more bouncing around than I wanted to, but at least I think we really nailed that one this time. We'll get down a little low. Once again, let's pull up here. Pulling up, pull around into a chandelle, get the nose, keep the nose up a little higher this time. As the speed bleeds off, roll out. Good practice on your coordination, this. Trying to make a nice coordinated wing overs to roll in and coordinate the turns, the chandelles on the way out. Okay, looking around that field, we've got some good bonfires going down there now. Where next? Oops, oh, that's good. Well, I guess we did a fair job on that last guy, even if we wandered around a little bit. Okay, let's roll in again. Let's go for the other field this time. Still got some vehicles along the tree line there. Try to keep it smooth. Come up from below. Come up from below. Stop wandering around. Yeah, we got him, but maybe not quite as well as the last time. And a nice smooth pull up again. Alright, I don't know how many more passes we're going to do. We're using up a fair bit of ammo. I'm not sure how many more live vehicles there are down there. Hard to tell the live ones from the dead ones, actually. Which, again, I suspect may have been trouble in real life, too. If people hop out of the vehicle and it's sitting there stopped, it's a little hard from this altitude to tell whether it's just stopped or whether it's actually been damaged. Okay, let's go around, and actually we'll come in from the other direction this time. Always good practice, I guess, to make sure you're not making the same attack every time. We haven't seen any ground fire, but in general, it's probably a good idea not to make the same attack over and over again. Let's go look at the corner this time. Looks like there's a couple vehicles down there. Let's try and pull up to them slowly here. That guy's alive. I think he moved. Not sure the second one was, though. Alright, once again, we're up and away. Let's go to the right this time. Alright. Not too many more, I think. Let's see, what can we see? So I'm pretty sure I strafed a dead vehicle on that last one. I've used a fair bit of ammunition. Oh, you know what? I'm not sure there's anything left shooting at down there, and I'm just not sure how many rounds of ammunition I have left. Maybe a good idea to save a few. So I think we're going to turn the nose for home and call that mission complete. Before we go, though, I just want to collect my thoughts a little bit here about that mission, because as I said, I wanted to try it and see if it showed me anything about what it was like, you know, for those pilots that flew these airplanes in Normandy. So what did I learn? Well, first of all, I think they spent an awful lot of time in their aircraft. And for a lot of that time, they weren't firing their weapons or dropping their bombs. Second of all, it's often said, but I now realize they must have had powerfully good eyesight. I mean, even accounting for the spotting difficulties in DCS, flying around at 5,000 feet looking for trucks and tree lines is not a job for the myopic, clearly. I also realize that to be good at this, at strafing ground targets, you really have to be a good pilot. I mean, flying smoothly and with coordination between your feet and your hands, both hands, is pretty clearly one of the keys to accurate strafing, and one that I haven't mastered yet. So, overall, I would say that this mission gave me an opportunity to gain an appreciation for the fact that the job those guys did in Normandy may not have been wall-to-wall excitement and terror, as maybe it's portrayed sometimes. But man, I have a lot more respect for how good they must have been at doing what they did. For now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.